Okay, so we're going to look at an example of solving a rational inequality. And by rational, we mean that it has a fraction where we have an x in the top and an x in the bottom. Now, the easiest scenario on a rational inequality is going to be the one where you have the 0 on the right-hand side. And so in the next lecture presentation, you're going to see an example where you don't have a 0 on the other side. And you'll see how that complicates things a little bit. All right, but for us, we're going to start with the basic scenario where we have a 0 on the right-hand side. And so what we want to do is we want to look at places where we might see a sign change, like a positive to a negative or a negative to a positive. Now, that sign change would happen at a place where either the top part of the fraction is equal to 0 or a place where the bottom part of the fraction is equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking the numerator of the fraction, which is x minus 6, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. And then I'm going to take the denominator of the fraction, which is x plus 5, and set it equal to 0. And so I'm going to solve each of these for x. So on the first one, we have x is equal to 6. And on the second one, we'll have x is equal to negative 5. Now, these two numbers are referred to as critical numbers. These are the values where we might see a sign change from positive to negative or negative to positive. And so what we're going to do is we're going to draw ourselves a number line. And we're going to mark off these two values. So we'll mark off the negative 5 on the left and the 6 on the right. And so what that does is it takes our number line and splits it into 3 sections. So I'm just going to sort of cut those sections so we can see them. So we have a section that runs from negative infinity to negative 5. We have a middle section which runs from negative 5 to 6. And on the right, our section starts at 6 and runs to infinity. And so what we want to do is we want to choose a test point in each of these 3 sections. And so I'm just going to pick a number in each of those 3 intervals. So, for example, something between negative 5 and 6, the easiest thing to select is going to be 0. And something between 6 and infinity, maybe we could pick 7 or you could pick 8. Anything that you want that is bigger than 6. And then we need something between negative infinity and negative 5. So we might choose negative 6, or you could choose negative 7, negative 8, whatever, as long as you're inside that interval. Now, we're going to take those 3 test values and we're going to plug them back into our original problem. So I'm going to go back to the x minus 6 over x plus 5 less than or equal to 0, and we're going to plug those numbers in. So starting with the negative 6, so I am going to, in place of this x, and in place of this x, I'm going to put a negative 6. And let's look at what we get. So negative 6 minus 6 is going to be a negative 12. Negative 6 plus 5 is going to be a negative 1. And negative 12 over negative 1 is going to be positive 12. And what we want to know is that true or not? Is 12 less than or equal to 0? And since that is not true, then that is not going to be a part of my solution. So I'm just going to, I think just put like an X there. Okay, that does not work for that particular section of the problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and try the 0. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's make ourselves some room. So I'm going to now, in place of those x's, I'm going to plug in 0. So I'm going to put a 0 in place of both of those x's, and then let's look at what happens. So 0 minus 6 is negative 6. 0 plus 5 is 5. And so we have an expression that says negative 6 over 5 is less than or equal to 0. Is that true or false? We know that negative numbers are less than 0. So what that means is that this is a part of our solution. Okay, so I'm going to check mark in that section to remind myself that, yes, I want to take that part. Okay, and then finally we're going to use our 7. And so we're going to plug our 7 in. And let's look at what happens in that case. So if I plug a 7 in to my problem, I'm going to have 7 minus 6 is going to give me 1. And 7 plus 5 is going to give me 12. All right, so is 1/12 less than or equal to 0? And we know that it's not because it's actually bigger than 0. So I'm going to put an X in that section that's not included. Okay, so now I just need to write my answer. And so I'm just going to write the ones that have the check marks. So the only solution that we have to this particular problem is going to be this middle section that runs from -5 to +6. And like I said, the thing to look for is whether or not you have a 0 on this side. If you have a 0 on this side, you know that the problem is going to be much easier than having a number on that side to begin with.